How does a man born into bondage transform into one of the most formidable voices for freedom in American history? Frederick Douglass, an escaped enslaved individual turned global abolitionist icon, once proclaimed, "I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong." His life is a beacon of intellect, resistance, and moral clarity that continues to light the way for future generations. In this episode, we delve into the life of Frederick Douglass, from his harrowing upbringing in the shackles of slavery to his rise as a titan of the abolitionist movement. Explore the time period of 19th century America, marked by profound oppression and the struggle for civil rights. Witness Douglass's personal battles against enforced ignorance and his courageous escape to freedom. Finally, celebrate his monumental contributions to human rights and his enduring legacy that continues to inspire justice and equality today. So, grab a cup of coffee and let's get into it. Be sure to stick around until the end to discover how you can help keep Frederick's legacy alive. Born into slavery around 1818 on Maryland's eastern shore, Frederick Douglass was originally named Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. From a young age, the harsh realities of slavery surrounded him, yet it was within these confines that his spirit of resistance was kindled. Despite the systemic attempts to keep enslaved people illiterate, Douglass learned to read and write from sympathetic allies, understanding early that knowledge was his pathway to freedom. In an era marked by profound oppression, literacy was a beacon of empowerment, yet it posed a significant threat to the institution of slavery. Recognizing this, lawmakers across the slave-holding states enacted stringent laws to prohibit the education of African Americans. These laws were part of a broader strategy designed to maintain the social and economic order by suppressing potential dissent and rebellion among the enslaved population. Enacted during the early 19th century, these laws varied by state, but uniformly imposed severe penalties on anyone caught teaching enslaved people to read or write. In some areas, the punishment extended beyond fines and imprisonment, threatening physical violence, both to the educators and their students. These draconian measures reflected the pervasive fear among enslavers that literate enslaved people would incite insurrection and escape, undermining the foundations of the slave economy. Despite these oppressive conditions, many enslaved people, like Frederick Douglass, found covert ways to learn and pass on knowledge. These acts of defiance were not merely about learning letters and numbers, they were quiet rebellions against the institution of slavery, affirming their humanity and fueling their aspirations for freedom. Douglass himself often recounted how his journey toward literacy began with scraps of newspapers and continued through lessons given under the veil of secrecy. This path was fraught with danger, but it was a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of those who dared to challenge their imposed limitations. His ability to read and write not only paved the way for his escape, but also empowered him to become one of the most formidable advocates for abolition. Douglass's mastery of language allowed him to vividly articulate the injustices of slavery and to envision a future where all men and women, regardless of color, could enjoy the fruits of liberty and equality. His escape at the age of 20 was nothing short of heroic. Disguised as a sailor, Douglass boarded a northbound train, armed only with forged papers and unyielding resolve. His successful flight to freedom in 1838 marked the beginning of his crusade against the institution of slavery. During the 1830s, the number of enslaved individuals attempting to escape increased significantly, fueled by several factors, including the harsh conditions of slavery, the growing abolitionist movement in the North, and the establishment of the Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses used to help enslaved African Americans escape to free states in Canada. Most escapees from the southern states aimed to reach northern free states, such as Pennsylvania, New York, and eventually Canada, where slavery was prohibited. The Underground Railroad was instrumental in aiding these journeys, although it was not yet as organized as it would be in the following decades. Many escapees sought refuge in growing urban centers where free black communities were established. Cities like Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston became significant destinations because they offered somewhat better prospects for anonymity and employment. As tensions over slavery escalated, especially with the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, Canada became an increasingly popular destination because it offered legal protection against slave catchers. The British Empire, which controlled Canada, had abolished slavery across its territories in 1834, making it a safe haven. Some enslaved people in the southern parts of the United States escaped to Spanish-controlled Florida or went even as far as Mexico, where slavery had been abolished in 1829. The journey to freedom was perilous and fraught with challenges. Escapees faced the constant threat of capture, and the penalties for being caught were severe, often including brutal punishment or being sold further south, where conditions were even harsher. Bounty hunters and slave catchers used dogs, advertisements, and informants to track down runaways, making the journey incredibly risky. Despite these dangers, the drive for freedom pushed many to take the risk, and stories of successful escapes circulated both orally and in abolitionist publications, inspiring others to attempt the journey. After his escape in 1838, Douglass initially settled in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where he decided to change his name to distance himself from his past and avoid being captured by slave catchers. The name Douglass was suggested by Nathan Johnson, a friend and abolitionist whom Douglass stayed with in New Bedford. Johnson was reading Sir Walter Scott's poem The Lady of the Lake at the time and proposed the surname from one of the poem's characters, the Scottish chieftain Douglas. Frederick and his wife, Anna Murray Douglass, liked the historical and literary resonance of the name, though Frederick added an extra S to the end, making it Douglass. Frederick Douglass's choice of name reflects his deep engagement with literature and his strong desire to redefine his identity and agency as a free individual. This act of renaming himself was a profound statement of his freedom and his break from the past. Frederick Douglass, after settling in Massachusetts in the 1840s, rapidly ascended as a pivotal figure in the abolitionist movement. His formidable oratory skills, combined with his gripping autobiographical account, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, published in 1845, exposed the harsh realities of slavery and ignited widespread support among Northern audiences. This autobiography not only chronicled his experiences as a slave, but also underscored his unyielding quest for freedom and equality, influencing both American and international perspectives on abolition. Douglass's eloquence and articulate speeches were profound. He vividly illustrated the atrocities of slavery while advocating vehemently for its abolition. His ability to personalize the abstract injustices through his lived experience allowed him to connect deeply with diverse audiences, enhancing the impact of his message. This skill was on full display in one of his most acclaimed speeches, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, delivered in 1852. In this address, Douglass offered a scathing critique of American hypocrisy, contrasting the nation's celebration of liberty with the continued enslavement of millions. In addition to his speaking engagements, Douglass's commitment to the abolitionist movement was further manifested through his role as a publisher and editor. He founded and led several key abolitionist newspapers, including the North Star. Under his leadership, these publications became vital platforms for the anti-slavery movement, extending his influence far beyond the lecture circuit. Through editorials, letters, and essays, Douglass tackled issues of civil rights and justice, continually pushing for the immediate end to slavery and the establishment of equality. Throughout his career, Douglass faced immense personal risk. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 heightened dangers, as it allowed escaped slaves to be captured in the North and returned to bondage. Douglass himself was frequently targeted by violence and endured numerous threats to his life. Yet, his resolve never wavered, and his advocacy only grew stronger in the face of adversity. His strategic use of his personal story as a former slave, combined with his intellectual and rhetorical prowess, made him a formidable leader in the fight against slavery and for the rights of Black Americans. Douglass was a staunch advocate for both racial and gender equality. He participated in the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848 and was the only African American to attend, where he famously argued for women's suffrage alongside his fight against slavery. The Seneca Falls Convention was a seminal event in the early women's rights movement in the United States. held from July 19th to July 20th, 1848, in Seneca Falls, New York. It was the first women's rights convention of its kind and marked the beginning of an organized campaign for women's suffrage and broader equality. The convention was organized by women's rights activists Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and several others. These women had been active in the abolitionist movement, but were frustrated by the exclusion of women from speaking roles and participation in many abolitionist events. Modeled after the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Sentiments was the central document of the Seneca Falls Convention. Drafted primarily by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, it asserted that men and women are created equal and criticized the injustices faced by women in America, including the lack of the right to vote, unfair treatment under the law, and restricted educational and economic opportunities. The Declaration listed 18 grievances and 11 resolutions, demanding the recognition of women's rights as full citizens, including the right to vote. The call for women's suffrage was the most controversial resolution, and was only included after Frederick Douglass gave a powerful speech supporting it. The Seneca Falls Convention is often credited with initiating the first organized women's rights and suffrage movements in the United States. Subsequent women's rights conventions were held yearly, and the movement gradually gained momentum. The push for women's suffrage continued to grow, eventually leading to the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1920, which granted American women the right to vote. Frederick Douglass's participation in the Seneca Falls Convention was significant, as he was a well-respected leader in the abolitionist movement, and his support for women's suffrage helped to legitimize the cause. His advocacy highlighted the interconnectedness of the struggles for racial and gender equality. Douglass's influence extended far beyond abolition. He was an advisor to presidents and a tireless advocate for women's rights. His later years were dedicated to fighting for equality across multiple fronts, his voice a powerful instrument for civil rights, long before the term was ever coined. Frederick Douglass and his wife, Anna Murray Douglass, had 5 children together. Anna Murray, a free black woman, played a crucial role in helping Douglass escape from slavery, and their lifelong partnership was foundational to his personal and public life. Frederick Douglass held the position of U.S. Marshal from 1877 until 1881. During his tenure, he was responsible for the administration and management of law enforcement within the Capitol, a significant and prestigious role that underscored the respect he commanded at the time. This appointment was one of several federal positions Douglass would hold in his later years, demonstrating the broad respect and trust he had earned from multiple administrations. After serving as the U.S. Marshal, Douglass was also appointed as the Recorder of Deeds for the District of Columbia and later served as the U.S. Minister Resident and Consul General to Haiti. These roles reflected his status not only as a leading advocate for African American rights, but also as a respected public servant. Frederick Douglass passed away in 1895. But his legacy as a forefather of civil rights lives on. He fought not just for the abolition of slavery, but for the establishment of true equality in America. His writings, speeches, and life story continue to inspire those who fight for justice and human dignity across the world. Frederick Douglass's journey from a slave to a statesman is a testament to the indomitable human spirit. His life challenges us to pursue justice and equality with relentless determination. Frederick Douglass's legacy reminds us that the fight for justice and equality is ongoing. Today, organizations like the Equity Justice Initiative carry forward the torch he lit, working tirelessly to promote equity and social justice in communities across the nation. The Equity Justice Initiative focuses on addressing systemic inequalities through education, advocacy, and legal reform, ensuring that the principles Douglass fought for continue to evolve and impact our society positively. The work of the Equity Justice Initiative is crucial in our continued efforts to dismantle the barriers of inequality that persist in various forms. By supporting initiatives that promote access to quality education, fair legal representation, and equal opportunities, they strive to uphold the rights of underserved populations and foster an inclusive environment where every individual can thrive. To learn more about their transformative projects and how you can contribute to the cause, check out the link in the video description. Your support can make a vital difference in continuing the legacy of Frederick Douglass and advancing the cause of justice and equity today. Check out the description below for further resources on Douglass's life and works, and join us in honoring his legacy. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories from Impact in Black. Stay tuned as our next exploration of American heroes will delve into the life of Sojourner Truth, who shaped our nation's history with her unwavering fight for freedom and equality.